Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to my latest episode. My name's Sean Wasserkrug, and today you're doing a review roundup, as there has been a lot of movies that have come out in the last week, and just too many movies to do individual videos for. So we're going to be doing a mass review of 5 movies that came out here in the last week, between The Munsters, Hocus Pocus 2, My Best Friend's Exorcism, The Greatest Beer Run Ever, and Blondie. All of them are on streaming, so you can find all these on your streaming services. None of them are in theaters currently. But first things first, we're going to start with a movie that I had zero to any expectations for, and that was Rob Zombie's The Munsters. Now, I originally said on a previous episode with Brian Michaels that we probably weren't going to review this because this movie just looked that awful. But nonetheless, here I am talking about it. Brian and I did watch it together last week. We were hoping to do a stinker review, but nonetheless, by the end of the review, Brian said he wanted to have nothing to do with this movie and not talk about it probably until the end of the year when we do our worst movies of 2022. Yes, The Munsters is a horrible, horrible movie. I've never been the biggest Rob Zombie fan. I love his music, I do, but I've never been a big fan of his movies. Devil's Rejects, House of a Thousand Corpses, even not the 2 Halloween films. The execution is there, but the story, the writing, the acting has always been a big focal point or a big fail for me when it comes to Rob Zombie films. Coming to The Munsters, this was a movie that when we saw the initial trailer for it months back, it looked like a parody, or something you would see on a Saturday Night Live sketch, something that they would make to make fun of the movie that was coming out, not the actual film itself. There was nothing about the trailer that looked good. It looked overacted. It looked cartoony in a bad way. It looked like it was basically making a parody of the subject matter, which is based off of a TV show from the 60s and 70s that's very well beloved. And it just looked like it was doing everything it could to almost kind of spit in the face of it. To the point where I believe this movie was supposed to go out in the theaters, but they eventually sold it off to Netflix. Why, I have no idea. But nonetheless, The Munsters takes place in Transylvania. This is basically a prequel to the actual series where at the end of the film, spoiler alert, they actually do move to the American suburbs in California, right outside of Hollywood, which is where the TV show takes place. So a good 90% of this film takes place in Transylvania, where we follow Lily, played by Sherry Moon Zombie, Herman Munster, played by Jeff Daniel Phillips, and the Count, played by Daniel Roebuck. And this story is mostly about how Lily and Herman met each other, fell in love, and thus start the show of The Munsters. If there's one, I guess, redeeming quality I could give this movie is that some of its set designs, while it is a very cheap set design, because this movie does look very cheap, some of it doesn't look that bad. There were certain scenes in the film that I was doing my best not to watch the actors' horrible portrayals, but look past them and look at the set design and the layouts of everything, and basically went, this actually looks pretty cool. This actually doesn't look bad. This looks like something, like, and I said this to Brian during my review, if we were going to make a movie and we had no budget, I would be proud of this set. I would have, if we had made this set, I'd be like, man, this actually looks really cool. It probably looks like crap to 95% of the other people who actually have millions upon millions of dollars to make a film, but if I had made this set, I would be damn proud of it. Not the highest, good thumbs up for that, but nonetheless, I appreciated some of the set designs in the movie. In terms of the performances, this movie basically became who in the film is trying to impersonate another actor or a character from another show. Lily, played by Sherry Moon Zombie, her performance is just, she's not a great actress, not by any means, but she's married to the director, so she's always going to be the lead. She's doing, and the way Brian described it, her best female version of Captain Jack Sparrow. Her hands are always up. She's always doing ooh and all this kind of stuff the whole way through the movie. It doesn't matter where the movie is, what they're talking about, what mood or motivation or happy, angry, sad, whatever motivation she's got. She's always going to have her hands up. She's always going to be doing the Captain Jack Sparrow ooh kind of thing. And it just gets very, very tiring after a long while. Daniel Roebuck, who plays the Count, I didn't despise his character that much, but he is pretty much doing, and Brian did say he's pretty much acting spot on to what the character was like in the TV series that I never watched. But to me, he was doing his very best Robert De Niro meet the parents angle. There's so many times in this film where he says certain things to Herman that I'm like, this is basically coming from Meet the Parents. It's not a bad performance. It's just, once again, these aren't well-written characters. These aren't funny characters. They're just putting on performances, and not good ones at that. And then you got Jeff Daniel Phillips as Herman Munster. If I had to hear this guy laugh one more time, I might have shot myself in the head. It is a horrendous performance, which, like I said, based off of probably the Munsters, maybe it was a good performance in terms of trying to be like Herman Munster, but does not make this performance good at all. He's basically doing his best, for anyone who's ever seen the TV show Chuck, he's basically doing his best Zachary Levi performance as Chuck, but in a Frankenstein monster suit. There's never been a moment in this movie where I laughed or chuckled or even thought that was a clever line. There's never a moment where you give a living crap about any of these characters. All you care about is how much longer does this movie have to go on. It is an hour and 49-minute movie that really probably should have cut about 30 minutes just to make it a little more less torturous to get through. We both said this, Brian and I, while we were watching the movie, is that we really didn't know who this movie was for. Because it's not Rob Zombie horror fans, because there's no horror elements in this besides it being in Transylvania. There's it's not for children, because it's definitely not a kid's show by any means. I don't think it's for the fans of the Munsters TV series, because I feel like they're doing the show potentially at almost a parody-like disservice. And it's not really for anyone. I don't know who wants to go out of their way to watch this outside of Rob Zombie fans who want to carry a torch for him because they love Rob Zombie, which, like I said, I love Rob Zombie's music, but I despise his movies. And this is one of those that there's not one good redeeming quality about this film. And then the movie just kind of ends. I remember we did a time check. I think we checked the time on this movie like 8 times, wondering how much longer it had to go. And there was about 10 minutes left in the movie. And I'm like, where's the third act? Like, where's the climax of this film? Or is this movie just going to end? And sure enough, that's exactly what happens. The movie just ends. The movie basically leads up to the TV show, where there is no climactic ending. It's just goes until they finally get tired of writing a script for the movie, and then the movie just decides to end with the intro to the TV series. It's a horrible film. It's easily my worst film of the year. It's definitely not something I would recommend to anybody. Like I said, scenery shots here and there, they look great. There's certain set designs that look really, really bad. There's costume designs on monsters that looked laughably awful. There's Brian pointed this out, the green hue of the whole set. There's no sense to it other than just, Frankenstein's green, so let's make him green kind of thing. So there's a green lighting around the whole movie. They do this weird animation thing near the end of the film that just came out of nowhere with no service or purpose to help elevate the story. The Monsters is just a train wreck by gross proportions, and if you like that sort of thing, good for you. But this movie is a horrible, horrible film. I'm giving it a 10%. It's one of my lowest rated reviews I've given on the channel. I knew it was going to be bad. I just didn't know exactly how bad. And Brian and I were hoping for a so bad it's good, but it's just so bad that it's bad. Coming to our next film, this is a movie that is beloved by many, and we're waiting decades for a sequel for, and that is Hocus Pocus 2 on Disney+. For me, like I said, I'm not the biggest Hocus Pocus fan. I liked it. I think I gave it like a 7 out of 10 when it came out the first time around, but I'm not one of those Hocus Pocus people that watches it every single year, over and over. If you had asked me what the name of the sisters were outside of just watching the movie, I couldn't tell you, but I could tell you the leads. But I thought it was a tolerable, decent kids' Halloween movie, but I didn't think it deserved this cult following that it's had over the last few decades. But nonetheless, Hocus Pocus 2 comes back around again, and basically the plot this time around is 2 young women accidentally bring back the Sanderson sisters to modern-day Salem and must figure out a way to stop them from basically, taking over the town. Rinse and repeat from the same kind of plot from the first film, but less 1993, more 2022. All the 3 main leads are back with Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy. I probably said her last name wrong, but I apologize. they pick up right where they left off. I think Bette Midler does a great job as Winifred. I think Sarah Jessica Parker does a great job as Sarah, and I think Kathy does a great job as Mary. And it looks like they picked up right where they left off from the previous film. They didn't miss a beat. I actually enjoyed those three together. Do a lot of their jokes kind of go flat at certain points? Absolutely. But there is some up-to-date jokes, especially one at a supermarket or Walgreens, and certain kind of modern day, the way technology has become, that they actually intertwine really well with the three. The two young leads, Whitney Peak, who plays Becca, and Belisa Escobedo, I probably said that wrong, I apologize, who plays Izzy, and then you also have Lilia Buckingham, who plays Cassie. I actually liked their performances. I thought these three young girls did a solid job of introducing these new characters, making you like these new characters, not having to have this, like, boy trouble situation, or, like, you know, like, basically kind of in the previous film with Vanessa Shaw, and I'm blanking on the guy's name, having this kind of romantic entanglement. It was just more of these three best friends who basically are trying to stop the Sanderson sisters from taking over. You also got Sam Richardson as Gilbert. I love Sam Richardson and everything. I think he's hilarious, and I think he's great in this. Tony Hale plays the mayor in the movie, also the father of Cassie. He does overact quite a bit in the movie, but it's Tony Hale. If you like Tony Hale, you'll find him tolerable in the movie. And Doug Jones is back as Billy Butcherson. He's a little more cartoony this time around than he was in the previous film, but if you like Doug Jones and you appreciate his acting as Billy, I think you're going to like him in this. One thing that I actually really did like, that at first I didn't know I was going to like, but I actually did enjoy it as it went on. The first 10 to 15 minutes or so is an actual prequel of the Sanderson sisters as young women who learn to become witches. I think the young versions of themselves actually did a really good job. Plus, we also got to see, oh God, I'm blanking on her name, Hannah from Ted Lasso. I'm blanking on her last name, and I apologize. She basically is the lead witch that gives them the book, and basically, you know, shows that they are sisters. Or not sisters, but shows that they can become witches. Hannah Waddingham from Ted Lasso. I think she had a great little scene in there. I wish we would have seen her more, but she did what she was supposed to do in the crux of the film itself. Overall, though, I actually enjoyed Hocus Pocus 2 maybe even more than the first one, which I know for a lot of Hocus Pocus fans, that's sacrilege. How dare you say this was better than the first film? But I didn't love the first Hocus Pocus movie. I actually had a fun time with this one. There's some eye-rolling moments, and like I said, there's some jokes that don't land, but overall, I liked the young cast. I liked the Sanderson sisters brought into this modern age. I liked how there were certain things that outsmarted them with basically the modern technology, and overall, I thought it did a very good job. And I actually kind of also liked how it ended with everything, and I'm not going to say exactly what, but I did not dislike Hocus Pocus 2. I actually went in with very low expectations, and I surpassed them. So for me, I recommend Hocus Pocus 2. Now, if you're a die-hard Hocus Pocus fan, you probably have already watched this by now, and you either love it, hate it, or just thought it was okay. If you're not a Hocus Pocus fan, would I recommend this? If you're looking for a light-hearted family Halloween film, then yes, you should check out the first one, and then immediately check out Hocus Pocus 2, because they are very conjuncted together, so you do want to watch them both. But I think it was a very solid sequel. I think it's better than the first one personally. I know that's not going to be an agreeable thing for most people, but it was for me. I'm going to give Hocus Pocus 2 a 71%. Going to my next film, it's My Best Friend's Exorcism, which is on Amazon Prime. And normally I wouldn't be interested in this film, but it was done by some of the people who did like Happy Death Day and Freaky, which were two movies that I really, really loved. So that's why I kind of wanted to give this one a check out. It stars Isley Fisher from 8th Grade, and she was in one of my worst films of 2022 already with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. She plays Abby Rivers, and there's the plot. Her best friend has been possessed, and she must do an exorcism to save her. Amaya Miller plays Gretchen. She's the best friend in the film. This movie does its best to kind of be 80s cool with horror aesthetics. But for me, the film itself is just kind of bland, not funny, but not enjoyable to watch either. there's never really a moment in the film that I actually liked or cared about any of the characters. There's also two other friends that are a part of this group that you really, you get enough time with them, but never enough time to really develop a relationship to liking or caring about these characters when they're in danger by the possessed Gretchen. The one character I actually did like quite a bit was Christopher Lau's Christian Lemon. He pops in and out, but mostly towards the third act. He has a big scene with Abby and Gretchen. I like him from the TV show, the TV show Glow that was canceled on Netflix a year or so back. But other than that, there's not really a whole lot here. It's just a kind of a rinse and repeat in terms of a possession movie, but with some trying comedic elements that just frankly aren't that funny. There's a little bit of an Evil Dead vibe here in certain parts, but ultimately this just felt kind of bland and boring. It's not a bad movie by any means. It's just not a fun, enjoyable, or exciting movie. It was just kind of there, which is probably why it got dumped on Prime. I don't think any of the performances were standout or great. I don't think any of the dialogue or lines that made something like a Happy Death Day or Freaky fun and enjoyable to watch. There's none of that here, and none of the characters are really likable at the end of the day, so I really had no care on whether Gretchen survives or Abby saves Gretchen or any of these characters. At the end of the day, it felt like an hour and 40 minutes of a time wasted, but I'm going to give My Best Friend's Exorcism a 45%. Going next to one of my most anticipated films of the fall, The Greatest Beer Run Ever on Apple TV. This is starring Zac Efron, and for any of you guys who watched Brian Michaels and Mai's end of summer review, fall preview, we talked about this movie, about a movie that could maybe elevate Zac Efron up to the next echelon of performance and actors. We love Zac Efron, but we wanted to see him be taken more seriously as an actor, and this was a film that I said could get him down the right path of being looked at as a more serious actor. The story follows Chicky Donahue, played by Zac Efron. He's kind of basically this guy who has never really amounted to much in his life. He just kind of drinks at the bar all night, wakes up at noon the next day, and then rinse and repeats. He doesn't really do a whole lot. He's considered a disappointment to his father, and he's the cool guy that his friends all like, but no one ever really takes him seriously. And during this time, obviously the Vietnam War is happening, and all of his friends, outside of his close ones right here, have been going off to war, and a lot of people in his neighborhood have been dying. And a lot of them are people that he has close attachments to. And he's also got his younger sister who's protesting the war. And eventually, while one night hanging out in a bar with Bill Murray as the bartender with the most awesome haircut, by the way, basically he says the line, "I wish I could give each one of those guys over there a beer," which thus leaves Chicky to go, "I can do that. I'm going to take a whole bag of beer, and I'm going to go over to Vietnam and hand deliver each one of these beers to all the guys from our neighborhood to make sure that they know that we believe in them and we appreciate what they're doing over there." Thus, the story begins. This movie, I think, is not going to hit with a lot of people. Peter Farrelly from the Farrelly Brothers is directing this film. But for me, this movie worked really, really well. I think Zac Efron does a great job. He does a really good job of being this good-looking guy that can be snarky and kind of aloof of an idiot, kind of like how Channing Tatum does, but shows a lot of heart, and then when thrust into a dangerous situation, much like you see here, can kind of grow and not necessarily become a hero, because the Chicky character is not a hero by any means, but basically you see this character go from where we see him at the beginning of the movie to becoming a different person by the end of it. And that story is what is really the crux of this whole story with The Greatest Beer Run Ever. Yes, the Vietnam War and how it affected everybody and how you're seeing different sides of the war is a definitely big part of the film. But it's watching Chicky, or Zac Efron's performance, going from this guy who doesn't take anything seriously, who's just kind of wants to drink beer and not think about much, grow and see the world in a different light. Because when he first gets over to Vietnam, this is one big game to him. Like, oh yeah, we'll go over here, we'll drink some beers, we'll have fun. Oh, it's a war, but no one's crazy. But then once he gets thrust in to the danger, and once he is in situations that are threatening to his life, and he develops friendships with certain people along the way, you start to see him kind of get the wool pulled over out of his eyes, and he starts to see the world the way his sister sees it, the way how media kind of messes with people's perceptions of what's going on, how he sees things, and how it's portrayed differently by the newscasters. And you start to see the Chicky character develop and grow. And that's something that you really love in movies, or something that really helps you get behind a character, is you see a character that is one way and grows and develops as the movie goes on and becomes potentially something different by the end of the film, but better version of himself by the end of the film. And Zac Efron does a great job of that. The surrounding cast around him, I think, does a real job. Russell Crowe pops in and out at little parts throughout the movie. He has a bigger part near the end of the film. I think he does a great job. He's a photographer of the war. All of his friends that he goes and visits along the way in Vietnam, I think all of them do a great job of basically kind of delivering the danger of what Chicky's doing and the stupidity of what Chicky's doing throughout this entire thing. And after a while, you start to see the Chicky character kind of start to understand what's going on. There's another character played by Kevin K. Tran, Hugh Oklahoma, as they call him in the movie, that I didn't know how much I was going to appreciate this character until certain elements of the film later happened, and it was one of my gasp moments of 2022 when we finally get to see what goes on with him and Zac Efron's Chicky. Throwing that character into this craziness of a film and watching basically a bystander see this war, not from behind a TV screen, not from behind the reporters delivering the story, but seeing it firsthand and seeing him watch how this world goes and then come back home potentially and basically be a different person, because this is based on a true story. So yes, Chicky does survive the tale. But it is one of those things where I thought Zac Efron did very well. I think Peter Farrelly did a great job directing it. I think the cast around him was solid throughout. Like I said, this might not be the movie for everybody. Not everyone's going to enjoy this kind of a film, but I thought it was a very well done story. There's a great character development for the Chicky character throughout, and for the most part, I thought it was actually a very well done film, and it definitely met my expectations for what I wanted from this film. And I hope, once again, that this elevates Zac Efron to more serious roles that are good roles. He's tried serious movies before, but they just weren't the right fit for him. Here's hoping that this elevates Zac to a better performances down the road that could get him some potential award recognition down the road. I'm going to give the greatest beer run ever an 85%. Now I'm taking a big swig of water because I have a lot to say about this last movie. The last movie's Blondie on Netflix. Now, before I get into this, I want to say that this was one of mine and Brian Michael's more anticipated films of the year. We love Ana de Armas. We will watch Ana de Armas in anything. And we heard that she was going to be Marilyn Monroe. We were like, hell yeah, that is a great idea. I think she's going to knock this out of the park. She's fantastic. She's obviously breathtakingly gorgeous. I can't wait to see what this does for her career, and maybe she can get an Oscar award out of it, or at least a nomination out of it. Netflix took it, and then the big kind of story circulating around Blondie before the movie came out was that it's got an NC-17 rating, which made you go, ooh, what kind of movie is this? I watched it today, and this movie, I'm trying to figure out my words that I want to say about this film. It is the closest thing to almost watching a smut film without watching like some kind of like it's not a smut film. I don't want to say it like that. Like I say, it's hard to find the words that I want to use for this. This movie is 2 hours and 46 minutes. It is 2 hours and 46 minutes of basically watching a woman, Marilyn Monroe, or Norma Jean, whatever you want to call her, but the actress Ana de Armas, basically being abused, mistreated, just obliterated as a human being, or the Marilyn Monroe character, obviously, for 2 hours and 46 minutes. It's not good. It is not good at all. And the only reason why I don't put this movie below the Munsters in terms of worst film of the year is that Ana de Armas is literally putting on a performance like no other. The script is not doing her any favors. She basically spends most of the film either on the brink of tears, crying, in the brink of a nervous breakdown, or drugged out of her gorge. It doesn't help her. in terms of giving her some enlightenment in terms of putting on a great performance. But Ana de Armas knocks it out of the park any way she can. Does, by the end of this super long runtime, wear on you? Absolutely. It weared on me after about 45 minutes. This movie is just so viciously cruel to the character of Marilyn Monroe that it just felt like they took pleasure in showing you every bad possible thing that could happen to this character. The director, Andrew Dominic, who I have seen him do other films, so I know he's not a first-time director. He's acting like a director that just came out of film school and wants to do every artistically douchey thing you could possibly do behind the lens to try to act cool and edgy and doing all this. He constantly goes in and out of black and white and color with no easy transition, with no reason or thought, just do it. He goes in focus, out of focus. He goes aspect ratio change to aspect ratio change, and he does weird imagery and weird unnerving imagery throughout the film. Why? I have no fucking idea. When a director, any director, usually does these things while filming a film, it is to add to the element of the film or to do something that makes the film stronger or more impactful or does something to elevate a scene a little bit more than what it could do without it going to this aesthetic. Andrew Dominic's direction, he looks like he's just doing this to just fucking do it. Like, here's this scene. What can we do? Let me throw a dart at the wall. Black and white for the 18th time. Cool, let's do it. Let's do a weird zoom in, fade out, blurry scene just to do it. Cool, add it to the film. There's no rhyme or reason to why the decisions the director chooses in this film are happen. The plot is disjointed as hell. It basically glosses over any good things that happen in Marilyn Monroe's life. There's literally a moment in the film that completely takes you out of the movie so bad that I literally just started to laugh and shake my head at how blatantly dumb this movie is. And I felt bad. I felt bad for Marilyn Monroe, and I felt bad for Ana de Armas. Because, Marilyn Monroe, the character, the person, Marilyn Monroe, the way the way they portray her character in this is demeaning, derogatory, and just straight up abusive. The way they make her act, just as a human being, is just like, it made me feel like the writers of this film hated this woman. And like I said, any good moments that this character had either was played off creepily kind of funny, or is just glossed over and jumped ahead. There are relationships that she is in that seem very prudent and important to the character that are just dropped, and then they jump ahead and she's with another person, and then that's dropped and she's with another person. The way they handled the JFK side of things, oh my god, that is one of the most horrific things this entire year. The way they use abortion in this movie is horrific and awful throughout this whole thing. The way they handled Joe DiMaggio, awful. I'm not saying any of the stuff that actually did happen probably did happen. If it did, okay, that's one thing. But my god, everything about this movie is atrocious. It is brutal, it's one of those things where it's like, wasn't expecting to go into Blondie and have a good time. I wasn't expecting to go, I had a blast watching Blondie, because Blondie's supposed to be a serious film. But you watch a serious movie like Manchester by the Sea, which is a gut-wrenching, heart-blown punch, moment after moment, but it is acted beautifully. The story is woven beautifully, and while, yes, you're being heartbroken as you're watching these characters' lives be destroyed, you understand the beauty of what we're seeing. Blondie is not that. Blondie is, I'm going to push you face down into a bed, and yes, that is very, very related to the very first 2 minutes of Ana de Armas' performance in this film, and I'm just going to repeatedly abuse you for 2 hours and 46 minutes without letting up. And just when I think I'm about to let you come up for some air, I'm going to push you back down again. And just when you think you're going to see an end of the tunnel, and you just think that you're going to get to a moment where maybe I'm going to get some levity, maybe I'm going to get something that's going to make me feel good about the character. Nope. Screw you. We're going to go even more darker. Never in this moment where I actually went... There are moments where I was like, Ana de Armas is acting her ass off. And then there's a parts where at the movie I'm like, what's the point anymore with her performance here? Because it's so degrading and just browbeating her performances down that you just kind of throw your hands up going, why the fuck am I still watching this? Why am I still watching this? I'm watching this out of respect for Ana de Armas because I don't know how many times I wanted to stop watching this movie. Because it's just that much of a chore and kind of torture to get through. Because it's just that badly written, it's that badly shot, it's that badly directed and edited. But the saving grace is that Ana de Armas is there, and you just, much like you just didn't want to give up on Marilyn Monroe, and you're hoping that it's going to go good for her, which you already know how it's going to end, you just kind of hope that Ana de Armas was going to get some good scenes eventually, or do something that's going to help her, maybe feel like she's not the only one in here trying to do well. But greatly, by the end of the film, it just does not happen. Blondie is an atrocity of a film. I downright despise and hate this movie. And it's just, I understand the NC-17 of it all. There's one moment, especially during the JFK part, where I literally just kind of shook my head at just disapproval, and I've never done that. Not really. I've never really just straight up shook my head disapprovingly of a film going, I feel bad watching this movie. Like, I actually actively feel awful watching this film. And Blondie made me feel that way. I'm going to give Blondie a 15%. Munster's got a 10 because it's just outright awful in every respect. Blondie is also downright awful in every respect. But Ana de Armas deserves to at least have some recognition because she did go out of her way to put on one of the better performances that she could give. It's not going to be an Oscar nomination. It's not going to get any Oscar buzz because it doesn't deserve it. Because sadly, while she might be trying to give on that kind of performance, the movie around her is a dumpster fire of a failure. And I feel bad for Ana de Armas. And I hope her next role, because she had another bad film this year with Deep Water with Ben Affleck. I hope down the road, Ana de Armas finally gets a movie that really elevates her performance and really gives her the award recognition she gratefully deserves. Because Blondie was a slap in the face to her, was a slap in the face to Marilyn Monroe, and it was also a slap in the face to a lot of females in Hollywood. I get back in those days, a lot of that shit was like that, but it felt like the directors here wanted to make sure to put everyone in their place going, this is Hollywood. And no one wants to actually see that. And yes, it might be a cold, hard truth and all that kind of stuff, but it just... 2 hours and 46 minutes of it is a little much. Hell, 45 minutes of it is a little much. But at the end of the day, do not go out of your way to see this movie. Do not. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of emotional just distraughtness of having to put yourself through what Marilyn Monroe and Ana de Armas have to go through in this film. And frankly, I wish I had my 3 hours back. Because Brian, even though this was Brian's one of the most anticipated films of the year, he's like, I'm not watching this movie. I know how bad this movie is going to be. I refuse to watch it. I was like, oh, I'll watch it for you, and I'll tell you it's good. And I immediately wish I could have my 3 hours back because it is that abysmal of a movie to watch. It deserves to be buried deep, deep, deep down in the cells of Netflix to never be recovered from and never to be watched again. And I could not unrecommend this film more. Anyway, that's our mass review roundup. I hope you guys enjoyed most of these reviews. If you guys did, go and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos that pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, you get to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, I know we have plenty of movies coming out here in the next month. If I get in touch with any of them or I watch any of them, I'll have reviews on the channel here for you. In terms of shows, Brian and Michael and myself, we still have not locked down what we're going to do for October, if we're doing any. But if we do, we will drop them on the social media outlets for you guys to know. We did drop our Halloween special here last week, so if you guys wanted to know what to watch this Halloween season, Brian, Michael, and myself have 61 films for you to watch to enjoy for your Halloween horror extravaganzas, as well as, like I said, our end of summer and fall preview for the rest of the movies for the rest of the year. Feel free to check out those videos. And until next time, in case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.